Are your bones truly strong and healthy? Or could you be silently increasing your risk of osteoporosis by eating foods that damage your bones without even realizing it? If you really care about your bone health, you need to stay away from these 10 hidden dangers. Some of these may surprise you. They're silent enemies hiding in your everyday meals. If you're serious about fighting osteoporosis, the first step is to take a closer look at your diet. Let's dive deep into how certain foods can affect your bones and what to avoid if you want to keep them strong for life. What is osteoporosis? Osteoporosis is a condition where bones gradually lose their density, becoming weak and more prone to fractures. Healthy bones may look solid, but they're actually like tightly packed sponges. In osteoporosis, this structure becomes porous, full of holes, and bones start to break down from the inside. Ready to learn what foods are secretly working against your bones? Let's get started. Your skeleton will thank you later. 10. Smoking, one of the most dangerous enemies of your bones. It's not a food, but its damage to bone health is worse than many harmful foods. Smoking doesn't just harm your lungs or heart, it's a serious threat to your bones as well. When it comes to osteoporosis, smoking contributes in multiple destructive ways. 1. Reduces osteoblast activity. Nicotine and toxic substances in cigarettes suppress osteoblasts, the cells responsible for building new bone. This means slower bone renewal and weaker bone structure. 2. Lowers estrogen levels, especially in women. Estrogen helps maintain bone density. Smoking decreases estrogen, which speeds up bone loss, especially after menopause. 3. Disrupts calcium. Absorption smoking interferes with calcium absorption in the intestines and disrupts vitamin D metabolism, making it harder for calcium to reach the bones. 4. Impairs blood flow to bones. Bones rely on good blood circulation. Smoking narrows the blood vessels, reducing oxygen and nutrient delivery to the bone tissue. 5. Increases fracture risk and slows. Healing smokers have lower bone density and a higher risk of fractures. Even worse, fractures heal more slowly and with poorer quality in smokers. The bottom line: smoking inhibits bone formation and accelerates bone loss. If you truly want to protect your bones from osteoporosis, the first step is clear: quit smoking. Did you know? Smokers may have 5 to 15% lower bone density, and their risk of hip fracture is 30 to 50% higher than non-smokers. The World Health Organization, WHO, and the National Osteoporosis Foundation, NOF, classify smoking as a major risk factor for bone loss. 9. Too much spinach and Swiss chard, oxalate-rich foods. Yes, even some of the healthiest vegetables can backfire on your bones if you overdo it. Dark leafy greens like spinach, Swiss chard, and beet greens are packed with nutrients, but when it comes to bone health, they should be consumed in moderation. Why? Because they contain high levels of oxalates, oxalic acid. What are oxalates? Oxalates are naturally occurring compounds found in many plant-based foods. The human body also produces oxalates on its own. Oxalates and calcium, a complex relationship. In the digestive tract, oxalates bind with calcium, forming calcium oxalate crystals. These crystals are insoluble, which means the calcium can't be absorbed by the body and gets eliminated. Why this matters for bone health. Lower calcium absorption over time may lead to a reduction in bone mineral density. This can raise the risk of osteoporosis, especially if your diet is already low in calcium. When does it become a problem. If you're eating large portions of high oxalate greens, like spinach or chard, daily or multiple times a week, it may interfere with your body's calcium balance. People with low calcium intake or a history of kidney stones, especially calcium oxalate stones, should be extra cautious. Simple solutions. Don't eat spinach or Swiss chard alone. Combine them with calcium-rich foods like yogurt, cheese, sesame seeds, or almonds. Cooking spinach significantly reduces its oxalate content. Stick to a balanced diet. Moderation is key. Quick summary. Spinach and Swiss chard are incredibly nutritious, but too much of them can harm your bones due to their high oxalate content. Enjoy them 2 to 3 times per week, preferably cooked and paired with calcium-rich foods for best results. 8. Phosphate-loaded processed foods. Too much phosphorus throws off the calcium balance and speeds up bone loss. Highly processed foods often contain phosphate additives to enhance flavor, texture, shelf life, or color. You'll find them in processed meats, sausages, salami, deli meats, packaged soups, soft drinks, especially colas, commercial cakes and pastries, fast food items. These phosphate additives may seem harmless, but when consumed in excess, they pose serious risks to your bones. How phosphates harm bone. Health 1. Disrupt the calcium-phosphorus balance. Calcium and phosphorus normally work together to build strong bones. But when you get too much phosphorus, your blood phosphate levels rise, triggering the release of parathyroid hormone, PTH. PTH pulls calcium out of your bones to balance blood levels, weakening your skeletal system over time. 2. Compete with calcium for absorption. High phosphate intake competes with calcium in your gut, making it harder for your body to absorb the calcium you need. 3. Interferes with vitamin D metabolism. Phosphates can block the conversion of vitamin D into its active form, which further reduces calcium absorption. Who's at greater risk? Teenagers, bone-building years, postmenopausal women, elderly individuals, people with kidney disease. Even drinking just 1 to 2 cans of soda daily can reduce your bone density over time. Common phosphate. Additives to watch. For on labels: sodium phosphate, E339, potassium phosphate, E340, calcium phosphate, E341, phosphoric acid, E338, diphosphates, E450, triphosphates, E451. What you can do: read nutrition labels carefully. Avoid packaged products with phosphate additives. Choose fresh, natural, home-cooked foods as much as possible. Be especially mindful if you're caring for children or elderly loved ones. In summary, excess phosphate from processed foods can pull calcium from your bones, making them weaker over time. For strong bones, cut back on processed foods and embrace a whole food diet. 7. Excessive protein intake, especially animal-based. Protein is essential for life, but too much of the wrong kind can quietly weaken your bones. Protein is crucial for building muscle, enzymes, hormones, the immune system, and even bone matrix structure. But when consumed in excessive and unbalanced amounts, especially from animal sources, it may have a negative impact on your bone health. Here's why. 1. Increased acid load. Calcium leaching from bones. Animal proteins, meat, dairy, eggs contain sulfur-rich amino acids which produce acidic byproducts when metabolized. To neutralize this acid load, your body pulls alkaline minerals, particularly calcium, from your bones. The leached calcium is then excreted in the urine, Over time, this leads to mineral loss and reduced bone density. Bottom line, a high acid diet equals increased calcium loss equals greater risk of osteoporosis. 2. Promotes calcium loss. Through urine studies show that high-protein diets, especially those rich in animal protein, lead to greater urinary calcium excretion. This is especially risky if your dietary calcium intake is low. The result? Accelerated bone thinning and increased fracture risk. 3. Plant-based proteins are safer for bones. Plant-based protein sources like legumes, nuts, seeds, and whole grains provide high-quality protein with less acid load. They also offer fiber, magnesium, and potassium, bone protective minerals, antioxidants that help reduce bone breakdown. These nutrients work together to support bone strength and reduce inflammation. 4. Protein. Quality and quantity matter. Too little protein can lead to muscle and bone weakness, but too much, especially from red or processed meats, can cause calcium loss and increase osteoporosis risk. The key is balance. Recommended daily intake: 0.8 to 1.2 grams per kilogram of body weight. At least 40 to 50% of your protein should come from plant sources. Avoid excess red meat and processed meats, sausages, bacon, etc. In summary, protein is vital for bone health, but excessive animal protein can lead to calcium depletion and lower bone mineral density. The solution: maintain a varied, moderate protein intake with an emphasis on plant-based sources to protect your bones in the long run. Scientific support: American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. High-protein diets increase urinary calcium excretion. Harvard School of Public Health. Balanced protein intake is essential. Excessive animal protein can harm bone health. National Osteoporosis Foundation, NOF. Protein intake must be optimized alongside calcium and vitamin D for best results. 6. Trans fats and fried foods. One of the silent bone-weakening culprits lurking in your diet. Trans fats and excessive fried food consumption aren't just harmful to your heart. They pose a serious threat to your bone health as well. Here's why. 1. Causes chronic inflammation. Trans fats are compounds that trigger inflammation in the body. Chronic inflammation increases the activity of osteoclasts, the cells responsible for breaking down bone. At the same time, it suppresses osteoblasts, the cells that build new bone. The result: bone formation decreases, bone breakdown increases, bone density drops. 2. Impairs calcium and magnesium absorption. Foods high in trans fats, like packaged snacks, margarine, and fast food, reduce your intestine's ability to absorb calcium and magnesium. These minerals are vital for bone strength and flexibility. Poor absorption leads to weaker, more brittle bones. 3. Disrupts vitamin D. Metabolism. Trans fats can impair liver function. The liver is responsible for converting vitamin D into its active form. Without enough active vitamin D, your body cannot absorb calcium effectively, increasing osteoporosis risk. 4. Linked to obesity and sedentary lifestyle. Trans fats and fried foods are calorie-dense. Regular consumption contributes to weight gain. Excess weight often leads to decreased physical activity, reducing mechanical stress on bones, which in turn causes bone loss. Common sources of trans fats: fast food, burgers, fries, trans and saturated fats, packaged biscuits and wafers, partially hydrogenated oils, margarine, industrial trans fats, donuts, pastries, cakes, trans fats, and refined flour. What can you do? Always check labels for partially hydrogenated oils and avoid them. Cook at home using healthier fats like olive oil, moderate amounts of butter or coconut oil. Choose grilling, boiling, or steaming over frying. Replace trans fats with omega-3 fatty acids found in fish, walnuts, and flax seeds to support bone health. Scientific fact: diets high in trans fats are linked to lower bone density and higher osteoporosis risk, especially in postmenopausal women. In summary, regular consumption of trans fats and fried foods is an open invitation to bone loss through inflammation, impaired mineral absorption, vitamin D disruption, and weight gain. These silent enemies weaken your bones quietly but effectively. 5. Carbonated and cola-based drinks, popular beverages that threaten bone health. Carbonated and cola-based drinks not only provide empty calories, but also negatively affect bone health in several ways. High phosphorus content, cola, and similar carbonated beverages contain high amounts of phosphoric acid. Excess phosphorus interferes with calcium absorption in the intestines and disrupts the phosphorus-calcium balance in the blood. This imbalance causes calcium to be drawn out from the bones. 2. Caffeine content. The caffeine found in cola and some carbonated drinks increases calcium loss through urine. This leads to a decrease in calcium in the bones. This effect is particularly pronounced in young people and postmenopausal women. 3. Sugar and fructose. Drinks high in sugar, especially high fructose corn syrup, increase inflammation. Chronic inflammation can trigger bone breakdown. Additionally, excess sugar can negatively affect vitamin D metabolism. 4. Replacing milk and calcium-rich drinks. Especially children and adolescents who choose carbonated drinks instead of milk or natural calcium sources experience reduced calcium intake, which adversely affects bone development. Scientific research. Summary. Journal of Bone and Mineral Research. Significant decreases in bone mineral density have been observed in women with increased cola consumption. American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. The combination of caffeine and phosphate may lead to bone mineral loss. Summary. Carbonated and cola-based drinks accelerate calcium loss from bones due to their high phosphorus and caffeine content, increasing the risk of osteoporosis. Additionally, their sugar content triggers inflammation and reduces calcium intake. 4. Alcohol, especially excessive use, the hidden enemy that paves the way for osteoporosis. Harmful effects of alcohol on bone health. 1. Disrupts bone cell activity. Alcohol suppresses the activity of osteoblasts, bone-building cells. This slows bone renewal and reduces bone formation. At the same time, it increases the activity of osteoclasts, bone-resorbing cells, accelerating bone breakdown. 2. Inhibits calcium absorption and storage. Alcohol consumption reduces calcium absorption in the intestines. The amount of calcium stored in the bones decreases. This leads to weakened bones. 3. Negatively affects vitamin D. Metabolism. The liver converts vitamin D into its active form. Alcohol impairs liver function, disrupting vitamin D metabolism. Vitamin D deficiency further reduces calcium absorption. 4. Affects hormone levels. Especially in women, excessive alcohol intake lowers estrogen levels. Estrogen is a key hormone in protecting bone health. Low estrogen increases the risk of osteoporosis after menopause. 5. Increases risk of falls and fractures. Alcohol impairs balance and coordination. This raises the risk of falls and bone fractures. This risk is especially critical in older adults. What is excessive alcohol consumption? The World Health Organization and experts generally define excessive drinking as more than 2 standard drinks per day. Long-term heavy drinking negatively impacts bone health. Proper alcohol use to protect bone health. Limiting alcohol consumption as much as possible is best. Research shows moderate intake, 1 to 2 drinks per week, doesn't cause serious harm, but excessive drinking is definitely harmful. Make sure to support your bone health with adequate calcium and vitamin D intake. Scientific sources: National Osteoporosis Foundation. Comprehensive studies on how alcohol negatively affects bone health. American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. Effects of alcohol on vitamin D, metabolism, and bone mineral density. World Health Organization, WHO. Relationship between alcohol consumption and fracture risk. Summary: excessive alcohol consumption inhibits bone renewal, disrupts calcium and vitamin D metabolism, affects hormones, and increases fall risk. Therefore, limiting alcohol intake is crucial for maintaining healthy bones. 3. Caffeinated beverages, whether beloved drinks or friends or foes to your bones. Effects of caffeine on bone health. 1. May reduce calcium absorption. Caffeine can slightly reduce calcium absorption in the intestines. This effect becomes noticeable especially when consuming more than 300 milligrams of caffeine per day. Reduced calcium absorption sets the stage for decreased bone mineral density. 2. Increases calcium loss. Through urine, caffeine increases calcium excretion through the kidneys. This contributes to a decrease in calcium stored in the bones. 3rd, may indirectly affect bone renewal. Excessive caffeine intake can disrupt the balance of hormones and enzymes that support bone renewal. Over time, this can lead to increased bone fragility. 4. Especially at-risk groups: postmenopausal women, individuals at high risk for osteoporosis, those with insufficient calcium intake. These groups are more sensitive to caffeine's negative effects. How? Much caffeine is safe. Daily intake of 200 to 300 milligrams of caffeine, about 2 to 3 cups of coffee, is generally safe for most people. However, this amount may vary depending on individual health status and calcium intake. Scientific sources: American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. Studies showing caffeine increases calcium loss through urine. National Osteoporosis Foundation. Guidelines on caffeine consumption and bone health. Summary: caffeine is generally harmless when consumed in moderate amounts, but excessive intake can reduce calcium absorption and increase bone mineral loss. For those in at-risk groups, caffeine consumption should be limited and calcium intake supported. 2. Excessively sugary foods, the hidden harms of sweets on bone health. Harmful effects of sugar on bone health. Damages the bone matrix. Excessive sugar intake disrupts the structure of collagen and other proteins in bone. Sugar binds to proteins in bone tissue, causing harmful reactions called glycation. This reduces the flexibility and strength of bones. 2. Increases inflammation. High sugar consumption causes chronic low-grade inflammation in the body. Inflammation raises cytokine levels that trigger bone breakdown. As a result, bone density decreases. 3. Inhibits calcium absorption. Excess sugar can negatively affect calcium absorption in the intestines. This leads to a reduction in minerals needed by the bones. 4. May reduce vitamin D activity. High sugar intake can impair vitamin D activity, disrupting calcium metabolism. Recommendations: minimize sugar consumption as much as possible. Choose fresh fruit instead of sweets. Check packaged food labels for hidden sugars. Increase calcium and vitamin D intake to support bone health. Scientific data. Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism. Findings show high sugar diets reduce bone mineral density. Osteoporosis. International reports a positive link between sugar intake and fracture risk. Summary. Excess sugar weakens bone tissue, increases inflammation, and impairs calcium absorption. Overindulging in sweets raises the risk of osteoporosis. 1. Foods high in salt. Excessive salt intake that threatens bone health. Harmful effects of salt on bones. 1. Increases calcium. Excretion. Excessive salt intake speeds up calcium loss through the kidneys via urine. Calcium is the key building block of bones. Losing it lowers bone density. Over time, this can lead to osteoporosis. 2. Negatively affects bone. Metabolism. High salt consumption disrupts the mineral balance in bones. It slows bone renewal and inhibits bone formation. 3. Sodium-calcium. Balance. Is disturbed. Sodium and calcium are linked in the body. Too much sodium prevents the body from retaining enough calcium. 4. Particularly risky foods. Processed and packaged ready-made foods. Fast food items. Canned and pickled products. Instant soups, chips, crackers, and similar snacks. What should you do? Try to keep your daily salt intake below the recommended 5 to 6 grams. Avoid processed foods as much as possible. Flavor your meals with fresh herbs at home to reduce salt use. Scientific facts. American Journal of Clinical Nutrition reports that high salt intake negatively affects bone mineral density. Osteoporosis. International. Studies showing the link between salt consumption and fracture risk. Summary. Excessive salt consumption increases calcium loss, lowers bone density, and raises the risk of osteoporosis. Limiting salt intake is essential for healthy bones. Healthy bones are one of the foundations of a long and quality life. Remember, consciously avoiding foods that contribute to bone loss and including balanced nutrition, plenty of water, and regular exercise in your lifestyle is very important. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Share your experiences and questions in the comments. Let's move together toward healthier tomorrows. Age is merely the number of years the world has been enjoying you.